Alright, Smoker Watcher's How to Quit book. Chapter 11, the rating form. Now that you associate with the smoker, you can exert benevolent social pressures on you. You're paired with his partner. You're prepared against countervalent pressure. What's next? The next step to begin using something we call cigarette rating form. Form is a very sheet with a various strategy for the progress. We'll explain that usually the appropriate times you must maintain with the rating throughout your campaign. Essentially, the rating means the analyzing various sub-habits for the added together to make up your smoking complex. On this form, each day with the enter certain items of the data about every cigarette you smoke. Turn on the following page, glance at the sample, the rating of the form of the moment. It is only a sample form. You can make your own rough copies of it and easily enough by using the line note patent book. You'll need one form per day, one or two notebooks, depending on how many cigarettes you smoke per day. As to reduce your smoking, of course, your forms will grow shorter. Alright, it has time, activity, desire, and amount smoked. And that's daily, 20 times a day, activity and desire, and the date and amount smoked. Form at the top, each form of the page, put with the day, with the week, of the day, and with the below, with this make of the complete record of one of the days smoking. 1 day smoking. Note that the form is made of the horizontal bars divided in 3 blocks. Section piece for each of these bars referred as one cigarette numbered in sequence. Throughout the day of the bar number 1 referred to the first cigarette you smoke in the morning. So on the left-hand section, each of the bar you put down with the time of the day you smoke with cigarette. If in the middle section you enter with the activity you would arrange, and the time drinking coffee, talking on the phone, driving to work, or so on. In the right-hand box section, each of the bar you write with a number of the page from 1 to 5, indicating how much you want with a particular cigarette. If in the rating scale of the 1, no desire, 2, very little, 3, moderate, 4, very much, 5, desperately needed it. In other words, the more you want a cigarette, the higher you score is on the scale. To the right of each bar with a systematic drawing with a cigarette, then a schematic drawing you indicate with how much of the particular cigarette you smoke before putting it out. Do this shading and otherwise marking the smoke portion starting at the right. In other words, imagine the light end of the cigarette is pointing to the right. If you smoked only 1/3 of a cigarette, shade otherwise marked with the right hand with the third cigarette, schematic drawing. If you smoked all of it the way down with the bright shade and the mark for the entire drawing. On page 88, a sample hand-drawn rating form so over the edge you can make with the line paper. Notice that the smoker on the first page is 7:30 on the particular morning with the breakfast table, and he rated it a 5, meaning that he wanted it very much. He marked off and it showed the particular cigarette habit, and the most of the entire right hand of the part of the cigarettes indicated that he smoked it all the way down the filter. He smoked with the 2 cigarettes while driving the car. He wanted the cigarette number 2 with a lot, not with as much as he wanted with the breakfast cigarette. He smoked all of it. Cigarette number 3 was different. He barely wanted it all. Smoked less than half of it. Maintain your rating of the different forms away with each cigarette you smoke. With a new notebook page form on every day, carrying with the form of the wherever you go, preferably wrapped around your cigarette pack, all along with a pencil for the cigarette with a rubber band at the end of each day, like a rating. Carefully, you will prefer to even after the campaign process. Every week when you meet with the other smokers in your group, take your growing file with the rating, the forms of you show them the partners study to discuss them. After the week, you will begin to notice the patterns emerging. Patterns that you're probably never aware of them before. As you will a little later, these patterns or the knowledge of them are almost uttermost in your climb to success. What is a damn nuisance, you say? Every time I want to smoke, I've got to get one of these forms of pencil, and it's embarrassing too. Why don't I? When do I want to do it in a restaurant at work? Or people are wondering. Oh, that's one of the main points. It's meant to be with a damn nuisance. The trouble with smoking, we've pointed out before, that it's too easy habit to slide into. It's easy that becomes automatically after a while. Almost reflex action really often performed without smoking at the beginning of the process, throwing minor obstruction into the automatic machinery. If you handle the rating tab faithfully with the consciously, you will force to think seriously along about each cigarette, now long in terms of the clock time, and a few seconds perhaps, but very long in comparison with the amount of thinking you should do. What is to say no, but the nuisance, frankly, yes, but mitigated the nuisance. In first place, it happens less and less often as the week progresses. In second place, you will probably find with it interesting learning things about your habit that never occupied with you before, but you learn them because of perhaps the first time you're being forced to analyze your smoking complex in detail. One thing you probably notice the most on the instantly with many of the cigarettes smoking during the day, perhaps nearly half of the 1 and 2 of the cigarettes that you barely want at all, with the result of a bad blind habit lightly. You light them and smoke them automatically like a robot without thinking about them. Their very acting making out of the rare rating form of the few days will quit probably because you stop smoking with many of all of the 1 and 2 of the blindly automatic cigarette the first time in your life if you are thinking about them. The act of taking one of the rating forms of the entire entering data of what on it will be in itself the render of the cigarettes less automatic with enforced thinking without contribution to the purpose. Thus, in the first stage of the campaign, within the first two, with the likely notice of the big virtually efforts for the drop in the cigarette with the consumption before, perhaps drop as much as 40%. But don't be surprised by this above. It doesn't expect. All don't expect for the drop to continue the same pace in the coming weeks. All that have happened in the first stage is what you have stopped smoking the cigarettes you really didn't watch much of the 1 and 2 of the cigarettes left, with mainly of the 3, 4, and 5. The attacks of these will make more time, thought, and effort. As a matter of fact, you may know that you pass into the more difficult second stage of cigarette where the consumption goes back slightly with a brief time. Don't let it discourage you. This happens to many smokers. Very few go to zero in a straight line. Majority take zigzag course of that, especially with the true with the smoker who cuts off the cigarette consumption with a big percentage of the first stage. Right after starting the draw with the ups of the daily rating form, it tends to go back to complacement about with the early and easy success. He thinks of the rest of the campaign will equally effortless. When he passes into somewhat demanding second stage, he tends with the disappointed momentarily with the parents slowed down with the progress, feeling gloomy. He smokes a few cigarettes more than he did heighten the exhilaration of the first stages, except to backslide occasionally at the normal with the natural, but don't worry about it eventually without a great deal of effort, mainly the rating form of the social pressure if you drop the level to 20 or fewer cigarettes a day. This will happen sometime in the second stage of your campaign timetable, the movement from the stages explained with a detailed course of part 4 of this book. From this point on, your rating forms will show that you're still smoking is only cigarettes that you really want, and blindly automatic cigarettes, rollback cigarettes are gone. Only 3 and 5 to remain. At this point, the rating form shows another kind of use by showing time and activity associated with each of the remaining cigarette forms gives you the greater graphic picture of the basic for smoking complex, so they show precisely with your sub-habits and armed with the essential knowledge you move into the third and final stage of your campaign. The various uses of the rating form will explain fully with the appropriate time to the moment of the only one with the critical importance of the form is the absolute necessity of maintaining every day with it meticulously through your campaign. To give an idea what they expect what we actually commit with yourself of the program being making out of the first stage rating. Here, there are two typical cases of studies that are survived with each study with a based on the one rating of the maintained by a smoker in 1 day smoking. One of the smokers man going through with a normal work day at his office. The other was a woman smoking through with a typical weekend. Each end had been smoke Watcher's program for about 1 week at a time. Thursday in the life of the Joe R. with cigarette number 1, 6:45 a.m. Jump smoke with 1 immediately arising on his rating form with the first with the 5 with the cross numbered out with the put in the 4 instead. When he asked himself about it later, he stated that he said his first was that he had been wanted with a cigarette badly because he hadn't had one during the 8 hours that he had been slept, but then he realized even lighting the cigarette that his throat was sore and his mouth was gummy from the yesterday's smoking, so he noted the cigarette from a 5 to a 4. Number 2, 7:20 a.m. Joe brushed his teeth, shaved his dress, and now he had another cigarette. As his wife got to breakfast and started, he didn't enjoy it, but knew that advanced. He didn't enjoy it much, and knew in advance that he was going to enjoy it much. Wasn't going to much. The taste of the toothbrush was still in the mouth. The mixture of the whiff of the tobacco smoke was not pleasant. He rid the cigarette of tooth, not even the rope with the number of on his form. Then wouldn't smoke more than a half a cigarette. It would occur to him that probably wouldn't smoke with this particular cigarette at all tomorrow. For years he had lit a before breakfast cigarette automatically with a half constantly with like robot-minded obeying pre-programmed commands. Very active using rating form of the very existence for the form was known with the delete with the senseless, joyless automatic cigarette with the Joe smoking sequence. Number 3, Joe smoked the cigarette with the after breakfast of the coffee on an equivalent rating rated to the 5. He wanted it a lot, enjoyed it thoroughly. He merely using with the rating with effort when it effortlessly killed the cigarette was happening with the cigarette. Number 2 was rating that form what to do. In fact, he had always already done isolated, identified with the breakfast or coffee, cigarette, a separate sub-habit. Strong sub-habit with Joe would have to attack it itself at a later stage of his campaign. Joe had been vaguely aware over the years that his other sub-habits existed. Daily smoking, he knew. Each day smoking was very like every other day, as he realized same patterns repeated day after day. He always smoked at certain hours in certain other recurring situations, such as drinking coffee after the breakfast he had known, but never analyzed it, attempted to elucidate it in detail. But now he was rating form at the beginning and extremely clear of the picture of daily smoking patterns were. After using forms a week, that he could even seek the breakfast, coffee, cigarettes, standing out with us starkly. It was repeated daily. Episode of the cigarette was entered within one of every day's form, and every day's it was a 5. And number 4, 8:15 a.m. There was one smoke during Joe's drive to work. He rated it 3. The drive normally took about 45 minutes before committing himself with the Smoke Watcher program. Starting his rating forms, Joe had virtually chain smoked during his drive. It was rarely the morning, didn't smoke at least 3 cigarettes while at the wheel of his car, but cigarettes had all been automatic. 1 cigarette, number 2. You had lit with the same unthinking robotic movements for the eve of the working with the control of the cars immediately on, starting with the rating of the forms being forced to think about with the cigarettes. He stopped smoking all but one of them. He had realized that he didn't want them. They were only nuisance for intervening with the driving and spraying his suit with snow of ashes. He never smoked on 1 cigarette during the morning drive, enjoying it moderately. Now he only smoked only 1 cigarette during the morning drive and enjoyed it mildly. He could not, of course, marking the ratings while in the process of taking out, lighting, and smoking this cigarette. He marked the form and he arrived at his work on building and parked car. Number 5, 9:20 a.m. Cigarettes came as Joe sat down at the desk, mentally prepared for his work day. He rated number 2. Smoked only habit in the past day. Ratings form show that always lit the cigarette at the same time. At this time, seldom smoked, but it always seldom smoked it all the way down. Always rated it either 2 or 3 minor sub-habit, one that he could probably detect defeat with a later stage with a little problem. Number 6 was 10:05 a.m. At the conference with the boss, several of his colleagues, Joe was an industrial salesman. He smoked another cigarette and rated it a 3. Number 7 at 10:40. Mid-morning coffee break, Joe rated for the cigarette with a number 4, smoked it all the way down. Idly flipping through his path to Dave ratings, he knew that he was always smoked with coffee and always rated with the cigarette high. He never thought about it before. Apparently with him, smoke with the coffee was a major sub-habit. It might break into small, manageable segments when his time came to attack, rather than trying to defeat the entire coffee break sub-habit at once. He might have an attack with a coffee break cigarette first when the breakfast, coffee, cigarette, and so on, but there would be plenty of time to think about this plan. His attack, he made mental note to bring up the problem next to him. He was others in benevolent pressure group, the particular when he talked to a partner. Somebody might have some suggestion. He seemed to remember hearing a partner talk about some kind of a difficulty over a coffee break cigarette. 11:50 a.m. The cigarette just before lunch, not particularly compelling to Joe. 1, Joe overrating, and then finally put it down as a 3. 12:25. Walking to the lunchroom, dinner across the street from his office building, Joe lit on the 9th cigarette of the day. Smoking on the sidewalk, rating it a 3. He smoked about 3 quarters of it. He put it on his smooth sat-down booth while 3 lunch companions, and none of them who smoked. Joe had always been uneasy smoking near the non-smoke. With the smoke bothered him that got into their eyes, interfered with the aroma of the food. He knew his lunchtime friends, though, to be too considerate to say, thought his habit was unnecessary nuisance, and he would be glad to be, he too, with a non-smoker. 1:15 p.m. Joe had another cigarette with after-lunch coffee and went down with a rating of a 4 with a thought when the coffee sub-habit may be worse. At 1, I have. His fellow lunchers watched him mark his rating form considerably, and made no comments. He asked them to leave them alone with his campaign. On the base outcome in Chapter 10, 2 of them were among the lucky millions who had never smoked, and they didn't quite understand what Joe was going through with respect to his wishes, being an intelligent man. The other luncher was an ex-smoker that understood fully that Joe was trying to do, and he had in fact helped convince the others that they should refrain from kidding Joe, needling him, or otherwise amusing themselves at expense. 1:30 p.m. Another cigarette while walking back to the office. Joe rated it a 2. Smoked less than half of it. Wonder of it why he bothered lighting it in the first place. Alright, 2:05 p.m. Joe had walked and wandered around the office for a while chatting with fellow employees. Now he sat down at his desk, prepared for an afternoon with a calling customer prospects on the phone. He lit a cigarette. He rated it a 2. It occurred to him that this one was similar to his fifth cigarette on the day, which had late with the first sat down with the next desk morning. Both cigarettes came at times when mentally preparing to plunge into something demanding session and work. In his mind, he labeled this a procrastination cigarette he identified with another sub-habit. Number 13 at 3 o'clock p.m. in the mid-afternoon coffee break with a cigarette with a course Joe rated with a 4, smoked all of it. And number 3:50 p.m. Joe was called in. The salesman smoked with a cigarette labeled at 3, recognized a similar cigarette that had smoked with a conference morning. He was another sub-habit. For some reason, he felt that he needed a cigarette whenever conferring with other people. Why? To conceal the nervousness if he appeared with a profound, thoughtful. He wasn't sure, but he resolved to bring the question up with his fellow anti-cigarette campaigners next time he saw them. Number 15 at 4:40 p.m. He smoked a cigarette he didn't really want, robot cigarette. He called it 2. Before starting cigarette, he recalled that the smoker shoveled such for the cigarettes in this part of the afternoon. Most have been rated 1. Undoubtedly, he would make a smoke any tomorrow. Number 16, 15, 20 p.m. cigarette just before leaving the office. He didn't enjoy this one much either. He rated it 2. Smoked only half of it. Number 17 at 5:45 p.m. Joe had another cigarette left out of the office. Walked to his car with rating 3 with a shame that his cigarette might resemble the one that he smoked while walking to his lunch. Both cigarettes came from them while leaving the place for the work, heading for a period of relaxation while still in another sub habit that determines the rating form with the care that gone through another week seeking repetition with the apparent pattern, smoked individual cigarettes and weekend too on the days that he was out selling on the road instead of over in the office. He did not know the answer, but he knew he was going to find them. Joe was learning a lot about himself as a smoker. Alright, number 18, 6:05 p.m. driving home. He smoked a 3 as the mornings, formerly chain smoked while driving in the car. Robot cigarettes were gone. He wondered how easy it would be to kill his sub-habit altogether quickly. Easy suspected he looked forward into moving into the final stage of his campaign when he would attack his sub-habits one by one. Number 19 was 6:15 p.m. Caught in the rush hour traffic jam. Joe smoked another cigarette out of sheer frustration, rating 2. Normally an easygoing man, intending to have the take away life as it came. He didn't recognize frustration cigarettes as a major sub-habit, a particular smoking complex, but it might be there. Thought with the frustration occasionally increased the wish for the smoke. Not every day, just sometimes. He would have to think about this and talk about it over the fellow campaigners. Number 20 at 6:55 p.m. Joe had his wife and the cocktail before dinner with a cigarette. Went down with a rating of a 5. Like many smoke watchers, Joe knew that the cocktail cigarette would take a lot of effort to beat. Number 21, 7:10 p.m. A second cocktail cigarette rated 3. Smoked only 2/3 of it the way down. Number 22, 8:15, and after dinner coffee and a 4, smoked all the way down. Number 23 at 9:30 p.m. Watching a television show, Joe had his 23rd cigarette of the day, rated at 3. Put at half smoke when one of the American smoke cancer anti-cigarette commercials appeared on the screen. A week ago, he reflected that habitually smoked many robot cigarettes while watching television. Alright, number 24, 10:45 p.m. Joe had his last cigarette of the day and with a can of beer just before he went to bed and called it 3. He glanced down the rating form of the one last time and noted the remarkable similarity to the form he filled out the day before that. Never before he realized how strong were the habit patterns made of the smoking complex. Every day he had smoked the same cigarettes at about the same time with the same degree of enjoyment. Also, neither that there's no number 1 day forms. He also know that there are no number 1s in the day form. All day had vanished efforts for the day Thursday when the 2 more days Joe would begin being second weekend and maintaining a rating of form. He wondered whether there's habit patterns for the coming Saturday and Sunday would mirror these of the previous weekend. He virtually certain they would. Or Saturday in the life of the Annie McC. Cigarette number 1, 8:10 a.m. Annie McSee would never smoke with a butt before breakfast. Had the first cigarette of the day with after breakfast coffee. She rated it 3. It could have been smoked peaceful alone. Could have been smoked. If she could have smoked it in peace or alone, might have rated it higher. Add things when smoked with the 4 youngest children, eating messily around and bickering and shouting. Her husband had been early with the oldest daughter and had gone out and grumbling to drive Girl Scout campsite. He came home later than bad mood and sighed, and it was going to be one of those Saturdays. Number 2, 8:50 p.m. a.m. Phone rang, and it was with the neighbors calling to discuss the plan of the church picnic following the weekend. Anne went through with the automatic sequence movement. She took the phone against the left shoulder and free with both hands, reached for the cigarette with the match of the right hand, tapped the pack to the table with a smack, shaking the cigarette loose, started to be into back to the left forefront, and only the finger came up against the rating that she had rubber band over the opening. Did she become conscious while she was doing it? She had gone through the sequence of the robot without actually realizing she'd done it with her telephone. Cigarettes representing a major sub-habit. The phone conversation lasted nearly half an hour before committing herself to the smoke Watcher's program. Annie might have smoked 2 or 3 cigarettes automatically during this time, at which it was one rating, and she smoked 1 rating at a 4. Number 3, number 10 a.m. Annie smoked with the 3rd cigarette with the drive in the supermarket with the 2 children, and the other 2 were playing with the neighbor kids. She rated the cigarette at 2, but she smoked it all the way down anyway. Annie was one of the smokers who were perhaps to come with some of the deep-seated fragility, hated to throw away partly smoked cigarettes. When she lit it one, she finished it, no matter how little she was enjoying it. Possibly she would have the obsession of the kind of sub-habit itself that might prove the useful later stage of their campaign. Deliberately to smoke at least some of the day's cigarettes only halfway down. She made a mental note of the talk with fellow campaigners about the odd question. Number 4, 10:50 a.m. Waiting for a long-time supermarket checkout, but Annie let another cigarette rated to her past weekend rating forms revealed that she was always smoked with a nervous, irritable, frustrated, generally unhappy. She hated waiting in line with the supermarket. It seemed that if she was about to hand the supermarket company a lot of money, that was the least company could do to make process the quickly painless staying in line made her mad. She smoked. She didn't even enjoy the cigarette. In fact, with the rating form showed, but they didn't enjoy the frustration of the cigarette. None of them were ever rated higher than the 3. As she yet felt compelled to smoke, why did she resolve to talk it over with a partner? Some of the psychologists have made special attention to the phenomenon of frustration smoking. Some smokers, like Joe R., smoke mainly in the hand for the company and accompanying pleasurable feelings, as well as driving and relaxing after work. These have been called positive effect smokers. Over the Annie McSee, predominantly negative effect smokers. They more light up with the relieve painful, unpleasant feelings. The majority of the smokers probably represent a little of the both. Each can analyze his own smoking complex in detail. Of course, you have the careful attention to daily ratings. Number 5 at 11:25 on the phone again, and smoked 4 at a 4. It's number 6 at 11:50 a.m. All children were out of the house temporarily, playing around in the neighborhood alone, and enjoyed the first peaceful moment of the day. Anne made a cup of tea and phoned with her best friend for the long chat and smoked at a 5. 12:30 p.m. Anne's husband was come home with the Girl Scout camp, particularly grumpy because of the small Saturday was now half shot. He and Annie had been invited to the cocktail party of the evening, and they spent the lunch hour explaining that why he didn't want to go. Annie, knowing he would enjoy himself hugely, when he finally got there, let him grumble and smoked a cigarette so she wouldn't have to talk too much. She rated it 2. Number 8 was at 1:20 p.m. She smoked a cigarette while listing an order of the children's clothes with a cheer of the book catalog, and then number 9 was at 1:45 p.m. Another while phoning an order of the she rated with both the cigarettes at 3 and occurred with a few minutes later with a glancing down her day's rating form that she tended to the break and smoke with whenever she was spending money. Her husband income was adequate, but not large enough to free of the family of money worries. Upset that her to see money going out with large chunks, $20 with a supermarket order, $40 over some of the children's clothes, with perhaps on the case. Thought money cigarette is a subhabit in its own with a category of frustration, irritation, cigarettes. She remembered hearing one of the fellow campaigners mentioning on the day that resolved to ask about the next time they ran into each other. Number 10 at 2:30 p.m. One of the Annie's little girls was going to a birthday party. Other children were jealous. They were squabbles with a bitter tears as a small socialite, but put on her frilly party dress and Anne smoked a cigarette to calm herself, rating him number 2. Number 11 was at 3:15, driving the birthday party, still feeling edgy, and she smoked another 2 that seemed that she might be able to drive her driving cigarettes. 2 minor subhabits here while driving cigarettes, just plain bored driving cigarettes. Number 12, 4:05 p.m. She took the other children to the ice cream stand with a suit with a disappointment over a birthday party. Both squabbed anyways, one with the dropped ice cream and the car's friendly, clean upholstery, and smoked a 3. Number 13, 5 p.m. of the day. Birthday was party over with the Anne chatted briefly with the host of the mother attempted to smoke while doing so, but refrained. She didn't want to go through the trouble explaining what the rating form was all about. After using the form of the week, she was used to keeping it wrapped around the cigarette pack form in the beginning. A subhabit itself, Anne didn't want to cheat herself with hiding it and ignoring the form, and even one of the once in a while. Rather than do that, she preferred not to smoke, postponed her 13th cigarette of the day until she was driving daughter home in the car, and she relatively relaxed because she called it a cigarette 3. Number 14 at 6:30 p.m. Anne had not smoked while she was her and her husband dressed in the cocktail party. 6 o'clock, she kept it for the regular telephone appointment with her partner, another housewife. She had talked mainly about the difficulty holding down one cigarette with the consumption while at the party. The party suggested that Anne stay close to the road, potato chips, peanuts, and perhaps some sort of low-calorie nibbles that might be provided. Anne had automatically reached the cigarette while on the phone, but encountered the rating form and put it down the pack again, feeling that it was ridiculous somehow to smoke while taking one partner. She refrained from smoking until she and her husband were in the car driving the party. She rated the cigarette at 3:15 at 7:20 p.m. Anne nibbled the cucumber slice with the other goodies for a half an hour before lighting her first cigarette of the party. She wanted it a lot. They called it at 5. She went into the bathroom to mark her rating form so she wouldn't have to answer the question. At 7:55, several times Anne found her hand reaching in automatically into the clutch of her cigarette. She wanted to have it smoke a cigarette, even smoke a cigarette every 10 to 15 minutes after the party. It hadn't been a rating that was ramped around her pack. The existence of the form precluded with the robot-like smoking. Annie's second cigarette of the party was 3. At 8:20, someone offered for her a cigarette. She had 3 drinks and no longer totally in control of herself. She accepted the cigarette and did not enter it in her rating until much later. She recalled it as a 2 was a robot cigarette. Smoked mechanically, tobacco taste did not mix well with the tobacco taste of the computer armors, onion dip. Number 18, it was at 8:45, riding home in the car with her husband. She lit another cigarette that didn't enjoy it at all. Was 1, the mouth tastes bad. She knew she was going to have the mean cigarette alcohol hangover the next morning. She reflected that might have been worse, so she smoked only 4 cigarettes since arriving at the party without her waiting for the form to interrupt her periodic move of the reaching with a cigarette. She might have smoked 10 or more cigarettes at the party without any of the realizing was lighting them. Number 19, Anne and her husband had a quick supper with the leftovers and coffee. Neither were very hungry. Anne smoked her last cigarette of the day with a coffee, called it a 3 for the future day, but that she would not want a cigarette at all. She was progressing as well as however the thought when went to bed. Several years had smoked something between 1.5 to 2 packs, 30 of the 40 cigarettes a day. Nearly half of these apparently had been robot cigarettes. She hadn't been realized that it had been even thought about until rating form forced her to do so. 1 week even the rating form, she effortlessly killed most of the mechanically smoked cigarettes. She knew the next stage of her campaign would be more demanding, but she had told us went over the series rating form here, and I was looking forward to the next stage. I already thinking about myself as a non-smoker in training. Chapter 12, Counting and Charting.